Hello, MCU fans! Today is going to be my spoiler review for KRAVEN the Hunter. We'll look at Easter eggs, timeline placement, everything you need to know. So it's not doing very good on Rotten Tomatoes right now. I do think that critic score is unfair, but 69% for the popcorn meter? Yeah, that's probably about right. The story is actually not that bad, and it has some great action scenes, but it just has way too many spots that are simply boring. Anyway, lots to discuss, so let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a December contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. So we're going to look at a very important question up front. Is the Sonyverse truly dead? So The Wrap had a very interesting article where they quoted several Sony insiders who said things like the biggest issue with the Sony Spider-Man spinoffs seems to be the lack of quality control. These movies just aren't good. Ouch. Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. Then they go on to say sometimes that lack of quality meets a movie no one asked for, which was the case with Madam Web, and that is a no-win scenario. Yup. Then finally they say it may be time for Sony to start cultivating different IP to launch new franchises. Okay, that actually sounds a little scary to me. So it's basically saying they're going to go in hibernation for a while, but it may come back again in a few years in a new form. I really hope that what they decide after taking a break is we need to let creative control go back to Marvel. They're not going to sell Spider-Man back to Marvel. There's no way that's going to happen. But if they just work more with Marvel and combine the universes, that might be a good answer. So they then go on to say they've developed what they want to develop for now. It's really now about the next Spider-Man film. So their focus is going to be Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man Noir, which is going to be on Amazon Studios, and of course the eagerly anticipated Beyond the Spider-Verse. That's probably the next couple years of what Sony's going to be focusing on, and we'll just have to wait and see what comes next. May we all pray it will not continue to be the Spider-Man-less villain universe. Oh my. But speaking of that universe, it's time to discuss KRAVEN the Hunter. And I gotta say up front, why did we not get this scene in the movie? That looks really cool, right? Nope, we did not get that. Although we did get this, which that's pretty cool. So, okay, let's talk about this movie. So, we start 16 years prior to the main part of the movie, where we meet Sergei and Dmitri. You might recognize those names. Yes, they have ultimately become the Chameleon and KRAVEN the Hunter. And just like in the comics, Dmitri, the Chameleon, is the half-brother of KRAVEN. So that's cool. Now, in the same flashback, we also meet Aleksei and Nikolai. Aleksei will ultimately become the Rhino, and Nikolai is, of course, KRAVEN's father. But he's also a very high-ranking mafia boss. And Aleksei tries to join him, but Nikolai basically refuses. And that will lead to them becoming enemies and rival Russian bosses down the road. And then we see how hunting can be a very dangerous sport. Sergei, who of course ultimately becomes KRAVEN, doesn't really want to do this. So because he does not fire at the lion, he gets pummeled and attacked and badly injured. Then we get this shot where some of the lion blood falls into one of his injuries, which, at least from some of the earlier trailers, made you think, like, was it a radioactive lion? Like, what was going on here? But actually, we do get a much better origin and explanation for his powers. So standing in the background here is a little girl, and unfortunately, she's out of focus in all the trailers, but this is the actress that plays her. But ultimately, she will grow up to become Calypso. Of course, Calypso, you know from the comics, as a voodoo high priestess who helps KRAVEN and at times heals him, saves him. In fact, that's what she's going to do in the movie as well. So a little background on how on earth she ended up standing over a near-dead KRAVEN. So she had a tarot card reading done for her. The first card was the subject, which was the high priestess, and that's because she comes from a long line of powerful women. The second card was the situation, which is the tower. And of course, if you've seen Agatha all along, you recognize these cards, right? But the situation is there will be a terrible accident. That's what happens to KRAVEN. And then most importantly, the third card is the outcome, which is strength. Notice the lion. That works perfectly, right? The interesting thing is she's told there is great danger in this card, but ultimately, I guess the danger is because it's going to create KRAVEN. Then the person doing the tarot card reading hands Calypso a healing potion, which, by the way, if you drink it, will also give you great strength, explaining where KRAVEN gets his super strength. Plus, it has a symbol on it for Papa Legba, who is the guardian of the spirit realm, at least in Haitian voodoo belief. And that's really important because KRAVEN's basically dead right now. So twice in the movie, now and then later on, Calypso will bring KRAVEN back from the dead. So it's kind of cool. We're seeing yet another spirit realm like the ancestral plane, like Valhalla, etc. This is the voodoo spirit realm. So very cool. Then, as was foretold in the tarot card reading, Calypso happens upon KRAVEN when he's at death's door. She gives him the healing potion, and sure enough, he comes back from the dead and now has his superpowers. So, very cool. All right, so also, KRAVEN decides he's done with his father. He knows that he's in the Russian mafia and wants nothing to do with him, and he leaves. Now the story jumps forward 16 years, because remember, all of this was a flashback from 16 years prior. Okay, so now we see KRAVEN on the hunt. And if you watched the 8 minutes that Sony released, that's what this scene is. So we're off in Russian wasteland, basically. This is the prison truck that stops so everybody can get out and have a pee break, and that's KRAVEN there. They're like, hey, thought we'd leave without you? Sure enough, they grab him, throw him back in the van. Now he's in prison, really scary prison. Meets his new roommate. This dude, man, I hate roommates. And then this might be one of the funniest jokes of the entire film. KRAVEN's like, I'll be here 3 days tops. So keep that in mind. So then he picks a fight with these two dudes, basically kicks their butts, so that he gets sent in to see the big guy, basically the kingpin of the prison. In fact, he's kind of like the kingpin in the Daredevil series in season 2, where basically he's living large in prison. So he says, do you know who I am? And KRAVEN explains, your guns kill thousands of men, women, and kids all over the world. Then he asks, well, who are you? And KRAVEN explains, I'm a hunter, and I hunt people like you. So he rips off one of these tusks and basically decimates everybody in the room. Then he plans his escape. Basically, he's not really Spider-Man climbing the walls. He kind of bounces off the walls, but it's pretty cool. And then this actually is a very important shot here because the camera is going to capture him as he is jumping out of the building. So we'll come back to this, definitely. All right, so there you see him running across the top of the roof. I don't know how he ends up dodging these bullets. He kind of does like these animal moves. Like, why would that let you dodge bullets? That was one of the few things that happened in the movie where I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know what's happening right now. And then this is really cool. Remember that roommate that he told, give me 3 days. I won't be here any more than 3 days. Well, now the roommate sees him out the window and screams, 3 days, 3 days, because he's so happy he's escaped. Love that. We needed more of this type of subtle humor throughout the movie, and we just didn't get much of it. But anyway, then he runs to this plane that's hiding outside the prison. Time to get out of here. And sure enough, they fly away just like a James Bond opening. I mean, it was really good. And then we learn about his very clever ruse, because he basically wipes this tattoo off the back of his neck, and we find that the real prisoner is back there where they all took the pee break. KRAVEN had taken his place so he could get in the prison and kill that mafia boss. I love it. Really well done. I wish the whole movie had been as cool as this scene. Next, we find that KRAVEN has now tracked down Calypso after all these years, and she was actually at a funeral for a friend who had died. Well, KRAVEN explains, I just killed the person who was responsible for your friend's death. Yes, that was the Russian mafia boss from the prison. So very cool. So he asks her, can we work together? Because she's actually a lawyer now and maybe could help him with connections in finding and rooting out all these bad guys. I also love this later shot where she kind of has the neck piece that looks more like from the comics. So very cool. And then we see him taking down more bad guys. I love where they're like, dude, there's 6 of us and only 1 of you. And he's like, yeah, there are 6 of you now. Well, it turns out one of them gets away, the main guy, but he tracks him down, and that's, if you saw the trailers, the scene where basically he shish kebabs him with the crossbow. So, pretty cool. Now, you might remember that I mentioned that Aleksei and Nikolai are basically rival Russian mafia bosses. Well, Aleksei tries to take out Nikolai, and in the process, Dmitri, of course, KRAVEN's brother, who ultimately will become the Chameleon, is almost killed. So, yeah, KRAVEN has it out with his father and wants nothing to do with him. But we also learned that Aleksei has a secret. Notice that backpack he's wearing. That actually has a tube that connects to a port in his side and basically injects him with a serum. So when he takes that out, yes, he converts into the Rhino. So he's basically doing this to kind of show off, to let everybody know just how powerful he really is. And then we learn about the coolest Easter egg in the movie. So who gave the Rhino these powers? That would be a doctor by the name of Miles Warren. So you might remember Miles Warren from the comics, right? He was the Jackal. He's the one that created cloning, and here he cloned Gwen Stacy. Look at how icky he is looking at her, by the way. That is just total creepy. But anyway, he's the whole reason we had the clone saga that went years and years in the comics. But he's the one that gave the powers to the Rhino. And we will hear of him again before the end of the movie. So then the Rhino hires the Foreigner to basically take out Nikolai, KRAVEN's father. So in the comics, the Foreigner is a hitman, and I had forgotten about this superpower, but basically, according to Marvel.com, the Foreigner has the ability to momentarily hypnotize you every time he makes contact with you. Basically, you black out. And boy, does he use that to his advantage in the movie multiple times, staring somebody down and then leaving them in a hypnotic state for several minutes. In fact, he does it to KRAVEN at one point, and KRAVEN actually, when he's hypnotized, sees these creepy spiders coming down. It's not really happening, right? It's a vision he's having, but it's kind of interesting that the one thing KRAVEN is afraid of is spiders. If that wasn't setting up fighting Spider-Man, I don't know what was. So remember I said this videotape of KRAVEN escaping the prison was important? Well, somebody gets a hold of it, gives it to the Rhino, who uses facial recognition to learn the identity of KRAVEN, but most importantly, learns about his brother, Dmitri. And that leads to the coolest action scene in the movie. Dmitri is kidnapped, and KRAVEN goes after him. So he breaks through this window. That's awesome. Notice he's barefoot, by the way. He books it down the road, lands on top of this truck, fights with those guys. So that ultimately leads to this rooftop scene where he's now chasing after a helicopter that has Dmitri in it. He grabs this giant rod and totally harpoons this one dude. Then he wraps this thing around the bottom of the helicopter, trying to pull it down, literally. But he's unable to, and it ends up pulling him into the water, and ultimately he finally has to let go. Man, what an action scene. It truly, truly was incredible. All right, so now he turns to Calypso for help because remember, she's a lawyer, has connections, so she's able to help him track down where they might have taken Dmitri. So we get this really cool scene. Basically, it's like a resort built in the side of the mountain. So KRAVEN scales up the walls and then tracks down the dude that kidnapped Dmitri. So he holds him outside the window by the scruff of the neck, ready to kill him, when we learn the whole thing is a trap. Dmitri isn't even here, and instead they shoot a rocket launcher at the building, blow the building up, and honestly, I have no idea how KRAVEN survived this, but he does, because, he's KRAVEN. So now it's time for the final showdown. So first KRAVEN fights the foreigner, who basically almost kills him, and it's Calypso that actually saves him at the last minute. But on the right, of course, that's Aleksei, who now is going to go full Rhino. So there's KRAVEN ready to take him down, but he was not expecting this, right? So we get the Rhino in all his glory, if you can call that glory. I mean, who wore it better? I don't know. They're both terrible, right? I cannot believe that Sony managed to totally fail at the Rhino twice. How is that possible? Anyway, so basically KRAVEN realizes nothing is getting through this guy's skin. So the Rhino charges at the truck that he's on, and then here's the key. Notice the port. Remember I talked about the port is what he sent the serum into to keep him from becoming the Rhino. Well, that's what ultimately is the weak point, and KRAVEN manages to lance something inside that port and take down the Rhino. So, okay, no more Rhino, thank God, because that was terrible CGI. Terrible. And then KRAVEN finally realizes who it was that gave that video to the Rhino. Remember the video of KRAVEN escaping the prison that allowed the Rhino to ID KRAVEN and ultimately to kidnap Dmitri? Yeah, it was his own dad. His dad did it because he knew KRAVEN would take out the Rhino in the process, and he didn't even care if Dmitri was hurt or killed along the way. Dmitri isn't killed, but he is badly injured. So KRAVEN gets his final revenge by taking all the bullets out of Nikolai's guns and leaving him to face the wild and ultimately to be killed by the same animals that he used to hunt years ago. Poetic justice. Then the story advances 1 year forward as KRAVEN learns that Dmitri has also visited Dr. Miles Warren. Yes, he has now fully become the Chameleon. In fact, we even see a shot where his face transforms into the all-white blank look, and then he turns into KRAVEN, basically, showing us that he now has the shape-shifting powers. So we officially have a chameleon in the Sony Spider-Man-less universe. And then we see that his father had left a final gift for KRAVEN. Yes, when he opens the box, he realizes that his father had taken the lion's skin, the one that, remember, had almost killed KRAVEN all those years ago, and now turns it into the famous coat that we normally see KRAVEN wearing in the comics. So finally, by the end of the movie, he looks like the comic-accurate KRAVEN. Crazy. Okay, so then the question is, when does this movie take place in the overall Sony timeline? Honestly, I couldn't find any timeline clues that gave me a specific month or year in this movie. If you found any and watched the movie, let me know, but I couldn't find any. However, the Morbius movie has some very interesting Easter eggs. So notice on this newspaper, we get Rhino on the loose, zoo hoax fools us all. So are they trying to imply the Rhino already existed, by the time of the Morbius movie? But even a more important clue is this newspaper, which says Chameleon's Great Escape. So that would imply that the entire KRAVEN the Hunter movie had to happen well before the Morbius movie, because he didn't become the Chameleon until the very end, until a 1-year time jump, if you remember. So, if we take the Sony timeline that I've been putting together over the years, and I've done videos on this, you can check it out if you want all the details behind this. Notice the Morbius movie was in June of 2019, so I guess then the main part of the KRAVEN movie, the main part, would have to be pre-June of 2018, because remember there was a 1-year time jump at the end, and that's when he finally became the Chameleon. So that's all assuming we can use Easter eggs on a newspaper to tell us anything. But for now, I'm just going to stick it here. However, I do plan to do a final Sony timeline review when KRAVEN hits digital and I can scour it for any other timeline hits. So I'll review the entire Sony timeline one last time. So there you go. That's my spoiler review of KRAVEN the Hunter. If you saw the movie, let me know what you thought about it. And also, if you think the Sony Universe is finally dead, please let it be so. So don't forget, December contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. And there's that membership option in case you're interested in that. And then I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are in the Timelines chat, and I want to give a huge shout out to Billy and Echo for their help in trying to place this movie in the overall Sony timeline. So we have 1,900 members on the Discord, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join us. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.